Hello, everyone.
Here we
Steve
go.
Atkinson here from Saddle Hunting Canada. I am very glad to be with Peter Ray today, a representative from Vortex Canada, as well as a bunch of other really cool companies. And Peter, we were chatting before online and in person. You are starting saddle hunting this year. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself, your history in the outdoors, and then we'll lead into why you started saddle hunting?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, I was kind of born and raised in the outdoors. My dad was a small game and waterfowl hunter and a fisherman, and that's kind of what I grew up in. And as I kind of hit my early to mid teens, I got interested in deer hunting. I grew up in southern Ontario in an archery only zone, so I picked up the bow at a very early age and spent a few years out in the woods chasing deer and kind of finding my way. And that was kind of right on the early time of commercially available tree stands. Most of our stands were made out of lumber and nailed to trees and so on and so forth. And a few close calls kind of drove me towards a tree stand, like a commercially available tree stand. Had some success, some failures, some close calls out of them. Loved it, still do, still have a lot of commercially available tree stands on my current hunting property. But I started to realize several years ago that they're not quite as mobile as what I'd like to be. A lot of work goes into hanging a 20 or 22-foot ladder stand, and oftentimes takes a couple of guys and a lot of muscle and a lot of noise and a lot of sweat. Very hard to do mid-season. So through some relationships that I developed with Vortex Canada. A guy there was actually saddle hunting a long time ago, like when it first came out. I think the first company was maybe Trophy Line or something like that.
Yes.
And he kind of told me about it. I kind of it doesn't, it sounds kind of neat, but it doesn't sound very comfortable or very safe. So I kind of just brushed it off. But the last couple of years, it's really come back on my radar because the saddle hunting craze is, we're in the, kind of the golden years. It's amazing to see how many people are doing this now. So yeah, I started to pay a little more attention, and of course I love to hunt, so I thought, hey, let's add this to the repertoire. And so yeah, I just bought my first saddle about a month ago. No hunting seasons are open right now. It's early April, but I've probably sat in the thing 20 times already, just in the backyard, just kind of getting the hang of it. The first half a dozen times I was maybe 3 feet off the ground at most, just to you know reduce the risk factor and just kind of get used to it.
Smart.
But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with my saddle hunting right now. So yeah, I'm very excited.
That's very cool. And so you said grew up in southwestern or southern Ontario, lots of small game hunting. Typically, before
Yeah,
you began hunting with the saddle, what would your
yeah.
normal hunting property setup or setup look like? Would you choose stands and choose trees beforehand and set them up before the season began? Or what did you do before saddle hunting to set up a hunting property?
So I grew up like hunting on the farm that I grew up on. So we would have stands prepared ahead of time. Like I said, very early on, they were, homemade stands made out of lumber and skids and whatever other, material I could scrounge up around the farm. But they
I
were always set
understand.
up ahead of time. As we transitioned into commercially available tree stands, same sort of scenario, ladder stands, hang on stands with climbing sticks, or again, homemade ladders, whatever. And yeah, we always had stands set up ahead of time. Generally, late July, August, we would start to do that into September. But we always tried to leave the property alone for a month or two after the stands were set up. The last 10 or 12 years started doing a little bit more mobile hunting. Got some lighter weight hang-on stands and lightweight climbing sticks that you could kind of be a little bit more mobile. I might still leave them in one spot for a few weeks, but they're a little nicer that you could fine tune them a little easier. You could move 40, 50 yards just to hit that trail just right or whatever. But still, for the most part, I'd say 80% of my stands are set up ahead of time. So
Okay, right on.
yeah. In
That's
fact,
good.
just a week ago, I was out with my hunting partner doing that exact thing. So
Yeah, that's it. I find I still utilize some preset stands as well on my personal property, because sometimes over years you just know that the deer just they like to walk right by here and get that preset. Um,
Yeah.
how do you think that the flexibility of using a saddle this year is going to be able to change your approach to hunting those properties, or now being able to access public land and different properties like that?
Well, I've always had a little bit of a mix of public land in my hunting, or at least for the last about 15 years or so. But again, preset stands, but you always took the chance of someone stealing it or vandalizing it or whatever.
Mhm.
But what I kind of see the saddle stands doing for me is just offering me the ability to maybe hunt out of a tree that you wouldn't normally think that you could put a tree stand in. There's trees that perfect spot, it's a great spot, but this tree isn't suitable for any kind of commercial tree stand.
Mhm.
So, but if you could crawl up into that tree safely, of course, you can probably hang a small platform on it and spend some time in a saddle in that stance. So that's kind of how I see it. And also I'm hoping it gives me the ability to fine tune my location where you set up a commercially available ladder stand. And if it's not in the right spot on the first go, it's quite a little bit of work to move it. That sometimes you only need to move 10 or 15 yards. Well, that's a lot of work where I could see even mid sit, you could be like, hey, this is not the right spot. Maybe the wind shifted or whatever. I need to be on the other side. 10, 15 minutes, you're back on the ground. You're over 10, 15 minutes, you're back in the tree, in a new tree. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. It's just that mobility and the ability to fine tune my exact location, regardless of, the quality of the tree that you end up sitting in.
Yeah, well, it makes total sense, especially as you said, growing up in a bow hunting only zone. With bow hunting, 15 yards makes a huge difference. That's the difference between, bringing home the bacon and
Absolutely.
telling a story about how he was this big, and 10 years later
Yeah,
he's gotten bigger every time the story is told. But that's huge.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yep. Yeah, absolutely.
um, what did you find? You said you heard about it years ago, but kind of skeptical. What, when you came back around, what this time made it stick and think, what, maybe I am going to try this? Um, what was that hump that you finally came over
Maybe
to
just
try it?
more, yeah, maybe just more years of experience, and just being maybe near the spot, but not right on the spot. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um,
Yes, I do.
and also just I think the street the saddle designs, the technology have come forward, in that time period where they're safer, they're lighter, they're easier to carry. I think back in the day they were quite a contraption, back 15, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
um, where now we have, better rope material, like just the am steel bridges, as opposed to a big webbing bridge, that reduces weight, reduces bulk, that sort of thing. And I'm, not old, but I'm not young. I'm gonna be 50 this year, so having lighter gear, being more mobile, being able to carry my gear without having to stop and take a break and huff and puff and all that kind of stuff, seems a little more attractive to me. And just over the years, just refining my techniques, it's starting to make sense to give that a go. And added pressure. More people are hunting now, so you've got to add, more to your arsenal. You've got to be more mobile. And back in the day, like if there was a hunter on the next property, we would move to another property. But now you don't have that option. There's hunters on every property. So you've got to, instead of thinking of that as a disadvantage, you've got to use it as an advantage. Try to determine what they're doing and use that to your advantage.
I
So
think that
I'm hoping a saddle will help me with that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Is that sometimes our hunting environments can change, and like I said, hunting pressure is something that a lot of us face. And if we can learn, just like you said, to use it to our advantage, then we can actually have more encounters with
Yeah.
game and have a better hunt. It may be a little more work on our part. We may have to
Yeah.
go back in, under, over, around, and through, to get to those spots. And so utilizing
Yep.
something like a saddle can be the difference maker. But if hunting pressure is pushing the deer towards a challenging area, then being able to wear your tree stand in can sometimes make
That's
a
right.
big difference. For sure. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
as a new hunter this year, what are some things that you're hoping to learn and get comfortable with saddle hunting before the season starts?
Just perfecting the setup and how to ascend and descend the tree quickly, quietly, and most importantly, safely.
Yes.
Um, I've always been like right from day one, even in the homemade lumber stands, I always had some kind of a safety line. Now, back in the day, we would just tie any rope around our waist and tie it to the tree. So,
Yep.
and that was probably just as deadly as the fall if you didn't have a rope. Of course, we transitioned to safety harnesses, the 5 point safety harnesses when they became available. So safety is definitely always on my mind. But I'll be honest with you, I don't climb even commercially made tree stands with a safety line from the ground to the tree. I climb unattached and then I attach when I'm in the tree. So to be honest with you, the saddle adds that it's attractive to me because now I'm using a lineman's rope on my climb, and I'm setting tree stand, or sorry, I'm setting climbing sticks now with two hands instead of one hand, where I'm hugging the tree, trying to stay attached with my one arm,
Yes.
attaching the climbing stick with the other arm. So the saddle, just for that alone, like I could see me carrying my saddle even when I'm going to set a hang on stand to hunt out of it that day, because now I've got, a perfect lineman's rope. Now most commercial safety harnesses have that too, but I've never had a lineman's rope before. Now I do. So yeah, that's as a new saddle hunter, just being quiet and efficient, ascending and descending and safe. That's my goal, to get that practiced and memorized here in the off season before I hit the woods this fall.
Yeah, I think that's excellent at points. That's safety is the reason that one of the main reasons I started saddle hunting as well. I had a summit self climber, and I was climbing up one day. And I was climbing down actually. I was climbing down,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden the knot that I had joining the two together had somehow slipped, and I didn't notice, and the bottom fell
Yeah.
out, and I was there, and thankfully I was only about 8 to 10 feet off the ground, and my day job is I own a CrossFit gym, and so I used to be somewhat fit, not as much anymore, but so I was able to lower myself down and do a reverse muscle up and grab on there and lower myself like that, by
Yeah.
my arms, and then drop, the 2.5 or 3 feet to the ground.
Yeah.
Um, but I said to myself, never again. If I was up at the top, what do you do? And because
Yeah.
I mean, you're supposed to wear a harness with a self climber, but I mean, you're in a self climber. You just do it. Have to move up another rope. I just didn't.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's for me was the point where realizing how saddle hunting, it offered less noise and less bulk than a self climber, but it was also safe. If I was to fall or something that happened to happen like that, the rope is right there in front of me. The lineman's belt is right there, and that was
Yeah.
a big thing.
It- Do you suppose as we age too, we lose that sense of self invincibility too? As we get a little older and a little wiser, we realize we are mortal, and
Yes.
so safety becomes more and more the forefront. And I have to say that's definitely the case for me, because I've had similar experiences like you said, where the bottom half of your climber slips out, and I was not as fortunate as you were. Mine happened at hunting height, and so it was an interesting um, slide down that tree. A lot of rash,
Yep. Yes,
but
sir.
and it was a rough bark tree, so it was particularly bad. But I survived it. No broken bones, a little bit of
That's
hurt
good.
pride, but that was it. But yeah, for me, the saddle, the way I started watching some videos there a year or two ago, and just seeing the convenience and ultimately the safety of it really is what brought me around for sure.
Yeah, and I think that if that's for me, often when I tell people it's saddle hunting, their first reaction is similar to yours, and mine honestly was at first too, like, oh, that can't be safe because it doesn't look big and steel and bulky and heavy.
Yeah.
But the more I dug into it, the more the safety aspects rose out. And like you said, that you're doing now, just spending time in the saddle as a new saddle hunter, that's you can't beat just time doing something. if you want to become an expert at something,
That's right.
you are proficient even, you have to spend time doing it and just getting smooth and getting
Yeah.
efficient. Um, yeah, is
Yeah.
there what style of climbing are you using? Are you using sticks this year? Is it plan to use sticks? You doing rope, SRT, DRT? What's your plan for climbing this year?
Well, so far I haven't got a complete saddle hunting kit. I've bought the saddle.
Mhm.
I just ordered a platform this morning with a buddy of mine who's getting into it as well. So we ordered together. Right now, my practice sessions, I'm just using like a single pole climbing stick
Yeah.
um, in my backyard because that's what I had available to me.
Mhm.
But the plan is to transition to some kind of multi-piece climbing stick. I've watched some of the videos, guys using one stick and aiders and that sort of stuff, and definitely going to give that a try, but I'm going to take it in baby steps, become a
Smart.
master of what I've got now, then go to like a multi-stick approach, get comfortable with that. And then I might try the one stick, we'll see. I've got a few hip issues, mobility issues. I walk and move just fine, but my flexibility is not what, like a 20-year-old, you know what I mean? So we'll see how successful I am with a one stick. We'll try it in the backyard and then go from there.
Right on.
But yeah, for now, my goal is by the time deer season rolls around this fall, um, probably something like a hawk helium stick kit, multiple sticks, something like that. I currently have a set of the muddy, they're like climbing ladders, individual pieces that you can kind of, go around the tree, around obstacles as you go up, but
Yep.
they're wider. There's two uprights. They're heavier. They'll work, but for the true mobility aspect, they're not the best. I'll probably try the Hawk Heliums, mainly with those ones because they're available locally. As you know, this saddle hunting here in Canada, the thing that I see holding it back is just the availability of product.
Yes.
Um, it's all coming out of the US, and there's some fantastic products out there, but just the availability of it, the exchange rate, getting it up here, and then of course the higher demand now due to COVID is making everything so much harder to get. So my local hunting shop has got the Hawk helium stick, so I'm going to give them a try, and they seem to get good reviews, so I'll give them a try. So
Right on.
that's kind of my goal for climbing for this fall.
No, that makes sense. That's a good way to start. That's one of the things that here at Saddle Hunting Canada we're trying to address is it's so hard to get saddle hunting equipment into Canada for a reasonable price. I
Hmm.
know I've spent there was once I ordered something for $120 and ended up spending $80 between duty, brokerage fees, and shipping, and it pretty much it doubled the price of something, bringing it across the border. And so we're trying to work on that. One of the things that you and I have talked about before this is we're also trying to host some in-person events where we can teach one sticking and we can show the hawk heliums and the tethered one stick and different things like that, um, and help saddle hunters get a hands-on experience here in Canada before they have to,
Hmm.
if they do have to spend extra duty. Hopefully we're working on fixing it, but if we can't, have that tangible hands-on experience. So that's something, stay tuned. Hopefully more announcements coming soon on that. um, Vortex
Excellent.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. um, in your experience and also
Yeah.
in being with Vortex Optics, what role do you think that optics play to being a successful bow hunter? Often we think of optics as what's on our rifle, right? The
Yeah.
scope on our gun. But what role do optics play to a bow hunter?
Well, for me, in today's day and age, the availability of the modern laser rangefinder, that's been a huge game changer. I've been a bow hunter for over 30 years, and technology in the bows has come forward like light years, leaps and bounds above what we were using 30 years ago. But remember what it's called. It's called archery, and
Yes.
there's quite a trajectory involved. Even today's fastest bows, we still have a lot of trajectory. And if you misjudge the yardage by as little as 3 or 4 yards, you could worst case scenario, end up with a wounded deer. Best case in my mind is miss completely. I'd rather miss than wound any day.
100%. 100%.
So rangefinders, yeah, yeah. So rangefinders to me, there's, I, I, I don't like to deal in absolutes because everyone's in a different situation, especially now during COVID. But there are rangefinder, and it's not just Vortex Optics. There are other brands out there. Do yourself a favor, do a little research, find one that's reasonably priced, has a good reputation, use it, and your success in the field will go up. For sure, rangefinders to me is where it's at for a bow hunter. I also don't enter the field without a decent set of binos. I have several different pairs, different magnifications that I use for different applications. 95% of the time in a bow hunting situation, I carry a small 6x32. Unfortunately, Vortex discontinued them a few years ago. They're in our Viper HD line, but they have fantastic glass, nice wide field of view, really good exit pupil, so a lot of light transmission. I don't need 10 and 12 power when I'm bow hunting because I'm normally in the thickets in the hardwoods or something like that where I can see maybe 100 or 120 yards at most. So basically all I'm doing with binoculars is I'm looking for movement, looking for that small piece of the deer. Last year, the buck I should have shot, I saw him by the white ring around his nose, right behind his nose. That's what I saw through the binoculars. I didn't get a shot at him because some coyotes ran him off, but hey, excuses. We won't live by that. But without the binoculars, I might not have seen him, and then I wouldn't have pulled out the grunt tube and called him. You know, he might have come in, but I was able to see him and bring him in and almost produce an opportunity there. So when I'm in the tree stand, I'm probably 30-40% of my time with my binoculars on my face for sure. I know guys that go into the woods that don't carry binos, and that's a choice. That's fine. But it has certainly led to a lot of success for me having the binos up all the time. Like not all the time, like I said, about 30-40% of the time. But yeah, those two things for bow hunting, I wouldn't enter the woods without them. If I was halfway to my hunting property, and I live about half an hour from my hunting property now, if I was halfway there and I realized I forgot them, I turn around and go back. Definitely, especially the rangefinder. I wouldn't go in the woods without a rangefinder.
Yeah, I've the rangefinder, two or three of my friends the last year, hunting buddies who haven't had rangefinders. I said, after saying, "Oh man, this deer was right there and I missed him," and I said, "Well, how far away was he?" And he said, "Oh, around." They were crossbow hunting, I think around 35. And I'm like, dude, if he was 30 or he was 50, and in the moment it all looks like 35. That's like, you can clean if you think he's 50 and he's at 30, you blow right over his back. And if he's at 50 and you think he's at 30, you ain't going to come anywhere near him. And it just makes such a difference. And for me this year in 2021, adding binoculars, I haven't really used them before this year, but that's something I'm definitely planning to put in my arsenal, because I've almost bumped this last year. I shot a really old 8-point. It's been on our property. It's the smallest. It's the smallest I've seen his rack, but he was really old. When I opened him up, and his teeth were almost worn down. Like you could see the ridge. It was worn down about that much. He was a really, really old deer.
Wow.
And I've seen him only a few times, but I almost bumped him because I moved. And just before I went to move, I was just turning my head that much, and I saw his tail flick. And if I hadn't seen that tail flick, it's an area I'd been looking over with my eyes a bunch of times. I didn't see him, but saw that tail and I froze. And I realized that I almost blew the whole hunt just because I wasn't aware. Thankfully, I got lucky. But if I would have had binoculars, I would have been able to see in that spot, and I would have been prepared. And I would have had time to slowly move around the tree. And again, thankfully, I got him, but it was one of those times where I knew I just got lucky. I knew I just, and so binoculars are
if
definitely
it wasn't
something
for luck, bow hunters probably would kill a lot less animals than we do now. You know, luck is the best thing to have on your side. So,
yeah, for sure. So size, like this is something I've been looking a little bit. I've talked to you, a messenger, and on the phone a bit as well,
Yep.
about this topic a little bit. But what do you recommend? You said those 6 by, because I'm someone, I like to be light in going into the woods. I don't like to
Yep.
carry on a lot of gear. I sweat a lot, and so to me, well, those binoculars are nice, but it's just more weight. So what do you recommend for saddle hunters? Typically, we like to be light and lean in our gear that we're
Yep.
carrying. What
Yep.
size or magnification do you recommend so that it fits in that sort of ultralight package that we're typically going for?
So what it comes down to for me is that, as bow hunters, we recognize that most of the time the game is moving in lower light conditions, normally around the hours of dawn and dusk, right? Normally.
Yes.
During the rut, all the rules are thrown out the window. It could be moving all the time.
Mhm.
But so what you need is you need a pair of binoculars that gather light well and transmit that to the eyes. Um, that's a number that we call exit pupil. So that's the light
Okay.
that leaves the binocular and goes into your eyes. So the way you determine the exit pupil of a binocular is you divide the well, first of all, let's just talk about the numbers. So 8 by 42 is very common. So 8 is the magnification level,
Mhm.
the power of the binoculars, and 42 is the size of the objective lens. That's the lens that's furthest from your eye. That's the diameter of that lens in millimeters. Okay.
Yep.
So 8 by 42. So the way we determine exit pupil is we do 42 divide by 8. So I don't have a calculator right here, but that's like 5.25 or something like
Yep.
that. And that's millimeters. So that's how big the shaft of light that leaves the binoculars and enters your eye. So for low light viewing purposes, we like to have an exit pupil of a minimum of at least 4 millimeters. So no less than 4. Okay. So an 8 by 42, we're over 5. That perfectly fits the bill. The only problem with an 8 by 42 is they're generally considered like on the upper end of the mid-size, maybe even full-size binoculars. So they're a little bit bigger. Okay.
Mhm.
Not terribly so, but if you're really trying to go lightweight, as a bow hunter, like we're in Southern Ontario, the eastern part of the country, we're typically dealing with much closer ranges. So something that might be better would be like an 8 by 32. So still have that 8 power, but now we have a 32 millimeter objective lens, which gives us an exit pupil of 4. So it's still going to be very good for low light, but now we're down into the realm of like compact binoculars. Okay. So lighter weight, smaller physical size, and just a little handier to carry around. Almost, they could almost fit into a jacket pocket. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If you go too small, like there's a lot of guys that run like 8 by 28s, 8 by 24s. They're great, compact, lightweight. They're fantastic, but the viewing experience in low light, you're going to suffer a little bit. You're going to have a hard time resolving the image. So it's kind of like the definition on TVs. 10, 15 years ago we had 720 definition on our TV. Well, now we're up into 1028. We have 2K, 4K, ultra high definition. So that exit pupil also has something to do with the resolution of the image that you're looking at. So the less light transmitted to your eye, then the lower the resolution. It's going to look more like a picture that's artificially blown up. So it's going to have a lot of pixels in it, very hard to see detail. So yeah, like to me, what Vortex offers, the Diamondback HD 8 by 32 is kind of, the ultimate of what we have right now as far as compactness and their usefulness in low light. So if you want something a little better, you go to 842, but then you sacrifice the compactness. You don't get that small lightweight anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, that makes a
So
lot of sense,
that's
and
why I
that's
said,
helpful.
yeah. And when I was describing my binoculars, I use the Viper HD 6 by 32. Now we're small again, we're compact. We have a 5 millimeter exit pupil or better, but unfortunately they're discontinued. So I'll stop talking about them now.
Yeah, getting us all excited and then taking it away, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that's right. Fan the flames and then throw a bucket of water on it. So
exactly.
yeah,
It makes perfect
yeah,
sense, and that's, like I said, that's something myself I'm looking to trying out some of the Vortex stuff this year, and incorporating that into my hunt. Even in turkey season is like 2 weeks away, right here, and to
Yep.
incorporate
Yep.
that into my turkey hunting a little bit as well. And yeah, I think it's something that there's a lot of little tools that we can use to help improve it. I think proper glass and utilizing that well. I know for me personally, that's where I think it's going to be the next thing to take me to a different level in hunting, is utilizing
Yep.
optics to a better extent than I have. And so I'm looking forward to it. I think it's like anything, you can go down the rabbit hole and get lost. There's so many options and so much stuff, but I'm looking
That's
forward
right.
to it.
We can go pretty deep into the weeds when we start talking about that, especially when you bring up the subject of turkey hunting, because a lot of guys, you know, they scout from their trucks. So now we can get into higher power binoculars, maybe even spotting scopes and car window mounts, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's a topic of discussion that could fill a podcast all on its own.
Yeah,
So yeah.
no, that's good. That's good. There, Peter. All right. So we talked about why you started getting into saddle hunting, just the mobility. We talked about the importance of how the glass, of having good glass and optics can make. Um, for you, what do you think stops most Canadians from starting saddle hunting? You may have already answered this before, but what do you think is something that stops Canadian hunters from saddle hunting um, at this point in time?
Well, I think my first answer, it's not so much it stops them, but a lot of Canadian guys aren't even aware of it yet. I don't think it's quite mainstream just yet. We're getting there. You know, we have you know, your podcast here. There's several other saddle hunting podcasts. There's other hunting podcasts that guys use saddles. So we're starting to learn more and more about it. So awareness is number one, and then number two, it's that imaginary line right across the 49th parallel. It's everything is in the US, you know. The only thing that I see in Canada that's saddle hunting related, that's reasonably available, is the sticks that we were talking about a few minutes ago, the
Alex.
Hawk helium sticks. I think Hawk also has a saddle, but I've never seen one in a store. And I'm in most, you know, with my line of work, I'm in most stores in Ontario. So yeah, it's just awareness and then availability of product. So hopefully that's something you work on as time goes by.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah,
No, I agree with that. I
yeah.
think that's something that we are trying to address. So if that's you and you feel like, what is saddle hunting and how can I get into it? Message me after listening to this podcast and we'll see if we can hook you up. And
That's
then,
right.
Peter, in your lifetime of hunting, what is some of the best hunting advice that you received that you were like, you know what, that just makes sense? And after hearing that, it improved the way you hunt.
Well, at a very young age, my grandpa told me, he says, if you want to be, you know, a good deer hunter and kill, what he said was kill big bucks. He says you only need to remember one thing. He says big bucks have wet feet, meaning they're always near some form of water. And at the time, it didn't really make sense to me. But over time, what I've learned is that the water creates edge. It creates habitat transition, is what it does. So it's that, and typically with that type of scenario, you have a little thicker bush or thickets or whatever. So, you know, that I kind of lost that. I didn't really realize what he was telling me until well into my hunting career, and then started to kill a few good bucks. And I started to realize as I'm dragging them through the swamp, I'm like, Grandpa was right. Big
Grandpa
bucks
was
have wet
right.
feet. Yeah. And you know, I also love to do a little bit of still hunting. You know,
Mhm.
kind of, you know, cut a track in the snow. I also do a little bit of muzzleloader hunting, a little bit of shotgun hunting, and a little bit of rifle hunting. But my primary hunt is definitely the bow. But you know, if you're lucky enough to cut a good track and it looks fresh, you know, if you're moving through the woods, even if you're not still hunting or tracking a deer, if you think you're moving slow enough, slow down. You're always, no matter how slow you're always going too fast.
Yeah.
You watch an undisturbed deer walk through the woods, okay, they very rarely take more than 2 or 3 steps at a time. And then they stop to eat an acorn or stop to get a drink or they stop to look around, eat a leaf or something. Um, they're motionless more than they are in motion.
Mhm.
And we as humans are the exact opposite. We want that instant gratification. We want to get quick into our stand. You know, about 10 years ago, I stopped trying to get to my stand in the dark and be in the stand, before legal shooting light, because what I found was that I was disturbing deer on the way in. So now what I do is I try to get about 100 yards into the woods just as legal shooting light comes, and then the rest of my walk in, I kind of still hunt in as slow as I can. Oftentimes I don't climb into the tree stand until 9 a.m. um, Biggest buck of my life, I unfortunately I didn't shoot him, but I had him at 18 yards at 1:17 p.m. Not rut. This was post rut and 1:17 p.m. and there he was. Unfortunately, being self-employed, I'm sure you're aware of it too. Um, you're on the clock 24/7. Doesn't matter what you're doing, you're on the clock. I got a very important email as I'm sitting in the tree stand. I had my phone stuck in my face. The deer walked in. He had me with my pants down basically.
Yeah.
So big bucks have wet feet. If you think you're going slow enough, slow down. And once you're in your tree stand, have faith. Put faith in your scouting. There's a reason why you're in that stand. So many times I suffered from, well, geez, I wonder what's at the other stand. I wonder if there's a deer at my other stand. So I get down and move, and during that move, I would bump a deer that was coming to the stand that I was in originally. So just have patience and have faith in your scouting. And obviously, if at the end of the year you never saw a deer from your tree stand, then obviously you have some work to do. But
Mhm.
as you get a little bit of experience and a little bit of knowledge, and you get those stands set up, then have faith in them. You put them there for a reason.
Mhm.
Like you're in that spot for a reason. So have faith in it. And last but not least, bow hunting is a game of time. You have to put in your time.
Yes.
Um, I went several years before I even got my first shot opportunity at the beginning of my bow hunting career. um, and there was a couple of years there, um, where I think it was the season of 1997. I didn't even see a deer within shooting range. And it really broke my confidence. But there was a lot of factors going on. There was food sources that were abandoned, and other hunters in the area. And that's when I started to learn that, hey, other hunters in the area, yeah, it sucks that you don't have the woods to yourself, but it's not necessarily a disadvantage. Use it to your advantage. Understand how the deer are reacting to the other hunters, and then plan for it and use that to your advantage.
Oh, those are great tips, Peter. That's great. I agree with all of them, and I actually did the same thing for morning hunts. I found when I went in dark as well, so many times I would bump deer. So many times I would,
Yeah.
and so now I do the same. Get to the spot, and I try to slip in at just barely light enough so I can start to see.
Yep.
And because the number of times where I couldn't see anything, and so I thought I was being quiet and go in, but there would be a deer there, and they would win me or smell me or hear me or whatever,
Yep.
and take off.
Yep.
And sometimes just being patient, going in that 15 minutes later, or in the dark,
Yep.
going the long way around so that I can be,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
in the right spot to
Yep.
sneak in at first light. It's it's made a big difference for me. In fact, probably the biggest deer I shot um, last year. I got that old one and then another one, where I'd hunted the same property with my hunting buddy, and he likes to go in really early. So I went in with him really early, and a couple times we bumped a deer on the way in, and so he had to leave. The next, and I said, "All right, man, I'm going hunting tomorrow morning, and you're going to see. I'm going to get that buck first thing." And sure enough, I went in the dark out there, but I just sat down at first light, and in fact, I think I was, me sitting in my spot making that tiny bit of noise. It was right around the rut. I saw him come out, and he walked right to me, and I shot him. I think it was 7:37 or something like that. And first light was at 7:20. And I texted him, I said, I told you, here he is. And it's just the, sometimes,
Excellent.
yeah, it was right by a swamp too. Grandpa was right. Big bucks have wet feet. Take your time,
Yeah.
enjoy the process. And yeah, thank you very much, Peter. Appreciate this. And I look forward to hopefully,
Thank you.
being able to connect to some of these events we're hoping to have here shortly, COVID, as long as, that doesn't block things. And yeah, I hope you enjoy cell hunting. And anyone out there listening, if you need some good glass, Peter knows some people who can get you some. And if you have cell hunting questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll do our best to get back to you. All right. Thanks again, Peter. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.